and then get us started with some introductions. As I said, people are still joining, so we'll continue to let people in from the chat. Please feel free to continue to introduce yourself in the chat, or excuse me, letting people in from the waiting room, and please feel free to continue to introduce yourself from the chat. I'm going to get us started, though, in the interest of time more than anything. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our kickoff meeting for our yet-to-be-named working group. That is something we can actually talk about today in our breakout rooms, is what we could potentially name this group as well. But that is not the focus of the group at all. The focus of this group will be around food waste prevention and food recovery infrastructure here in Montgomery County. My name, if you do not know me, is Jack Ewert. I'm the Policy and Community Outreach Coordinator here at the Montgomery County Food Council, and I will be the staff lead on this working group through the next 2 years. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us for this meeting. The Food Council is extremely excited about this opportunity to form this new working group, to learn more about food waste prevention strategies, to learn more about food recovery infrastructure in Montgomery County, and to learn what our unique value can be in this space. There's so much amazing work that is already taking place in this space throughout Montgomery County, and we're excited to be able to work with other partners and to be able to add to that work and also find our own unique space within the sector so that we can add our value as well. Before we get started, though, I wanted to just give a few people the chance to introduce themselves. First, our staff members that will be involved in the group, as well as helping to facilitate today's breakout rooms. So I'll start by turning it over to Michelle to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Caruso. I work at the Food Council, and I'll pass it to Anne Marie, I think, because that's what Jack is probably doing next.
Yep.
Hi, Anne Marie Hartbookbinder, Food Security Programs Manager at the Food Council. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you both so much. Next, I want to turn it over to two of our council members who will be co-chairs of this group as we head through the year. I'll first turn it over to Kelly to introduce herself.
Hi, thanks. I'm so glad to see you all here. My name is Kelly Dorton, and I'm a second-term member of the Food Council and a member of the Food Council's Policy Committee. And I'll turn it over to Carol.
Unmute. I'm Carol Jones. I have just joined the Food Council as a member, have been actively involved volunteering for a number of years, and will be co-chairing with Kelly this new work group. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to first start off by saying thank you to both of you for your leadership in this. And we're just so excited, as you know, to continue this work over the next year and into the future as we learn more. As just a little bit of a rundown of an idea for the day, and now that we seem to have a good majority of people in the chat, I'm going to drop an agenda in there in 1 second. But just for a little rundown for the day before I do that, we will be having, I'm going to share my screen here in a few minutes to talk a little bit about the Food Council's process when it comes to establishing policy priorities and why food waste and food recovery is now one of those focuses for the Food Council, and to learn a bit more about the why that we thought of as we were forming this group, as well as some ideas around the general plans for the year that we are still working through and we're hoping to work together to plan out, but the general ideas that we have sketched out for the year. I will then turn it over to Carol and Kelly, who will be giving us a little more background around food waste at the county level and at the state level, and a little bit, not too much, at the federal level as well, but just to give us some of that background so we can all start on the same level as we are in this conversation. We are then going to spend some time in breakout rooms, just using this as a time to talk more about ideas for how this group can focus going forward, ideas for potential site visits, or areas of interest for people participating in the group. The idea of today's meeting is to very much be a kickoff meeting. It is to gather as many ideas, as many thoughts, as many opinions as possible. So as we continue to plan going forward, we can take into account those who are interested in this space and make this a group that works for everyone and is a learning experience for everyone involved. Before I get started, I want to turn it over to our new executive director, Naya, who I know is feeling a bit under the weather. So we are very, very thankful that she is still able to join us today to introduce herself and say a few words to get us started. Naya?
Sure. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I'm not going to speak much. I don't know what it is I have, but I'm pretty sure my children gave it to me. Um, so I just want to say thank you to Kelly and Carol for co-chairing this, and of course to our amazing staff at MCFC for putting this together. So yeah, as you know, Jack said, this is a new convenience space, focused solely on food waste and recovery. And this is one of our priorities in our strategic plan, and Jack will go a little bit into more detail about how we arrived at that. But we will be hosting regular meetings and site visits to learn more about, the current infrastructure around food waste in Montgomery County, and also create space, for discussions within the food system as it relates to food waste and recovery, in this forum. And so today, I'm really hoping that we can articulate a vision for this group for the next 2 years. And we'll talk about some ideas for activities, potential site visits, and also to hear from you about some priorities for your own engagement. What would you like to see? What are some of the topics that you'd like for us to put on the table for discussion? So I really hope that this engages you all in thoughtful dialogue, expanding your networks, and looking to really generate implementable solutions in your own work. And finally, I just wanted to say this, that we will be participating in the Food Waste Prevention Week, which is from April 1 through 7. And we will do that by hosting a happy hour in partnership with Manna Food Center and the Compost Crew. So Jack will give you more details as to the location of that. But I thank you all for being here, and my apologies again for being off camera. I don't think you guys want to see me looking like this, but I hope to see and meet a lot of you in the future. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naya. And yes, as Naya said, we are still finalizing those last details on our happy hour. So I don't know if I'll be able to share anything by the end of this meeting, but I'll check my emails because it is very close to being finalized. But by the time I send out the follow-up notes at the end of the week, we will have all the information about that event to share with everyone. I am going to share my screen for a brief PowerPoint here to get us started with a little bit of that background and more information that Naya and myself were talking about. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about how the Food Council works when it comes to policy priorities and our different policy priorities. Policy priorities, we sometimes call them strategic priorities as well, but really the idea behind these priorities is to allocate our limited staff and volunteer resources to these areas of focus that we think we are in a unique position to make an impact on. Our policy priorities are carried in a 2-year cycle. So we are actually just starting a new 2-year cycle this year that will cover 2024 and 2025, which is why when I talk about the group, I sometimes will say our focus for this year before we head into next year, because this will be a focus for sure for the next 2 years. But I also say for sure because these priorities can be carried over from cycle to cycle. So just because it is something for the next 2 years, it doesn't mean after 2025, we claim to have all the answers, we claim to have all the solutions, we'll present them and walk away. That does not mean that at all. We hope to continue this work, and the reasoning behind our introduction of this, as I'll go into in a little bit, is that we found that this was an area that our partners and ourselves were involved in a lot anyway. So we thought it made sense to add it as one of our policy priorities. As I said before, our policy priorities are areas that our stakeholders and ourselves are uniquely qualified to engage on. We really emphasize the importance of storytelling and lived experience. We believe it's the best way to make change in the food system and to understand how infrastructure or other things can be changed to improve the lives of Montgomery County residents. We frequently look at our policy priorities because they affect things across the food system, which very much fits with this new priority of ours. So these can include production, aggregation, processing, access, waste, regeneration, and many, many other things. We believe that food waste and food recovery, as I'll touch on in a little bit, has a unique ability to access many different areas of our work. And why we're so excited to introduce it is so that we can make sure to engage all of our partners who do this work in many different ways. With all of our policy priorities, we make sure that equity is a core focus, and equity will continue to be a core focus for this working group as we move forward. We also use these policy priorities as a way to create structure and an organization to focus our work and our limited time that we have. Our current policy priorities for 2024 and 2025 include increasing food security, increasing access to affordable land for food production, increasing local food and beverage procurement, and then our newest one, reducing food waste and supporting food recovery, which this group will be focused on. I bolded it because it's obviously the focus of our group, but also to emphasize that it is the only new one of our policy priorities. As I said before, we can carry them over cycle to cycle, and we frequently do. We continue to work in the food security space in many different realms. We continue to work in the access to affordable land space and the local and promoting local food and beverage procurement as well. So we felt it was necessary to continue those as our policy priorities. We added food waste and recovery as our newest policy priority, and the kind of why behind that I'll go into. But just to acknowledge that this is our newest one, and like I said before, when this 2-year cycle is up, that does not mean that we claim to have all the answers and be at a final point, but that we are more than happy to evaluate where we are and continue the work if it is necessary and still relevant to our work at the time. So a little bit about how we have thought about the next year with understanding that there is a second year to come. Our first year is really focused on learning and education. And we say that because that is a learning opportunity for ourselves, and especially myself as well. Although I have learned a lot in the as we've begun to form this group, and I work with Kelly, Carol, and Michelle on it, I still claim to be no expert in the food waste and recovery space, and I'm here to learn myself. So our focus for the first year will be a lot about learning about the current infrastructure in the county and trying to identify gaps in that infrastructure, working with partners to determine how we can have an impact and not replicating work that is already being done, but finding our unique space to add value within this sector. We also focus this on increasing our understanding of food waste and food prevention infrastructure at a local level, as well as big picture. And this can include educational opportunities at the small scale, such as households, or the large scale at government level, or working with businesses as well. Year 2, as we have said, is really to be determined based on these findings of year 1. We do not want to go into this with a set plan for the second year, because we want the work to be dictated by those who join us in these working group meetings, and why we create space in the breakout room today, so we really can understand where we're going and really guide this year before we make any determinations about our goals for next year. So we're really excited to take this 1 year at a time and really bring people along this learning and educational journey with us. Now, a little bit about the why behind food waste and why we feel it is important to focus it within our policy priorities. Food waste is an urgent issue in the United States. 35% of all US food goes unsold or unused at retail or uneaten at home. And I say unsold or unused at retail or uneaten at home because this food waste occurs all across the food system. It is not just happening at home when people are disposing of food that goes uneaten. It is not just happening in restaurants where restaurants aren't able to get rid of all the food they purchased. It happens all along this chain. And so we want to learn more about this infrastructure and learning more about why this issue is so prevalent and what we can do to address it. 4% of US greenhouse gas emissions are associated with food waste, and it makes up almost 2% of the US GDP. At the same time as all this food is going to waste, we know that 1 in 8 Americans are food insecure. There is a large waste stream in Montgomery County with low recycling rates. So we identified this as an area of impact across many different sectors in the food system, and that Montgomery County is a unique place to explore this impact and focus our work for the next year plus. When I speak about those cross-sector impacts, I'm talking about the ideas of food security, food advocacy, environmental impacts, the connection of local businesses. All of these are impacted by the food waste stream, by food recovery infrastructure, and we believe that food security specifically and equity specifically are an area we can help to address from this angle as well. A lot of our food security work at the moment is through our SNAP work, our work with childhood hunger, and other efforts of the Food Council. And we want to tie this work in as well, while also acknowledging that this work crosses other sectors and making sure to bring in as many sectors as possible. We believe that a stronger food waste prevention and food recovery infrastructure positively impacts all elements of the Montgomery County food system. A very undetailed plan for the year, and that is the idea with it, because we, like I've said, are hoping to work together to formalize these plans as we go forward. But right now, our thinking, as I said, is to be learning and education focused. We will host at least 4 working group meetings, with this being our first kickoff meeting, but we will have more throughout the year. We have not determined when those will be, and we want to work with you all to find best times and best topics for those meetings. Amongst those will include our Food Waste Prevention Week Happy Hour, as Naya mentioned, and as I will share more details in our follow-up email this week. And we are really excited to host at least 2 site visits as well. We think it is really important to get out into the county and really see this work in action. So another thing we hope to learn from our breakout groups, and why it says we are interested in your feedback, is potential spaces for site visits as well. Our plan for the year, as I said, is very much tentative, and we are hoping to the breakout groups today will be a great space to learn more about what you all are interested in, so that we can tailor our meetings and site visits around what will be most impactful for those that are joining us. With that, I want to turn it over to Kelly and Carol to give it a little bit of background about where we are in the food recovery and food waste space here in Montgomery County.
Thanks so much, Jack. Kelly and I will briefly talk about county, state, and federal landscapes for our work. At the county level, we want to highlight that numerous organizations have been addressing the challenge of food waste from different perspectives over the years and have accomplished a lot. Again, as Jack said, our question this year will be, where can we add value? And we're thrilled that so many of the individuals spearheading this work are in attendance today, and we look forward to hearing your perspectives in the breakout groups. Too many to cite all, but I specifically want to note Heather Bruskin, who's now head of the County Office of Food Systems Resilience, Deanna Tato from DHS, who's been key in food security, as well as the team from MANA. DEP has also been central to this work. Unfortunately, they're engaged in a recycling education workshop today, so unable to join us. So in the interest of time, I'm simply going to highlight a number of strategic plans guiding these activities. From a waste management perspective, DEP released its food scrap strategic plan in 2018, which affirms the widely accepted waste management hierarchy: food waste prevention first, then recovery donation, and recycling for what remains. Though as a recycling agency, its focus has been on recycling. But more recently, DEP initiated an edible food recovery work group to develop strategies to expand recovery, and has launched a food waste prevention education campaign. The 10-year comprehensive plan for solid waste management in the county, released in 2021, includes an enhanced plan of action to move towards zero waste, which means reducing solid waste generation and maximizing recycling. And the plan prominently features strategies for food scraps, which, as Jack noted, is the largest solid waste stream in the county. Jack also noted food waste reduction is a powerful climate change policy. So during the implementation phase of the County Climate Action Plan, which was published in 2021, the county has acknowledged the role that zero waste activities can play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and is now tracking them in their reporting. And again, food scrap reduction is a prominent component of the zero waste activities. Now, turning to a food security perspective, in 2017, the county released its 5-year strategic plan for a food secure Montgomery, which described the level and distribution of food insecurity, identified barriers to food access, and laid out performance goals and timetables. Last year, the county released a follow-on strategic plan focusing on childhood hunger. Finally, we have the new small but mighty County Office of Food Systems Resilience, established in 2020 3 by the county and led by Heather Bruskin. In its strategic plan, it articulates a set of goals for building a stronger food system in the county that integrates the various elements, including food access and security, climate change, adaptation and mitigation, as well as expanding economic opportunity and ensuring emergency preparedness. So I turn it over to Kelly now to highlight the state and federal landscape.
Thanks, Carol. We can go to the next slide. Great. At the state, in 2021, the Maryland General Assembly passed House Bill 264, which often people will just refer to as HB 264, which required certain commercial entities, so not households, commercial entities that generate food residuals to separate those from other solid waste and ensure that the food residuals are diverted from disposal to recycling or recovery. That law follows the food recovery hierarchy, preventing food waste before it occurs, providing food for people and animals, and then recycling the non-edible food residuals. With a focus on reducing greenhouse gases, providing edible food to people, and improving Maryland's soils. And we'll have links to more information on that in our follow-up notes. Recently, the Maryland Department of the Environment also received funding from the US EPA to conduct an organics assessment, identify recycling infrastructure needs in the state for organics, and develop education and support for the state's diversion mandate. And that's the state SWIFR grant listed there. And also at the state level, the Food System Resiliency Council convenes a variety of Maryland's food system stakeholders in open meetings throughout the year. And the Montgomery County Food Council actively participates in that, as well as others who I see in this meeting. And the focus of that council is to address the food insecurity crisis, develop equity and sustainability policy recommendations supporting long-term resiliency in the food system, to expand the impact of food council organizations and increase food production in Maryland. And they develop recommendations meant to inform legislative and other action in the state. And the 2023 recommendations highlighted, among other things, the needs for a distributed network for cold storage in the state, expanded education and financing for organics recycling, and the need for more technical and financial assistance related to local food residuals program expansion. I'll go to the federal level. So what is really exciting at the federal level is the increased focus on food loss and waste is driving the development of toolkits, data sharing, and most exciting, funding to support local and food waste prevention, recovery, and recycling. EPA last fall released a draft national strategy to reduce food loss and waste, which provides some insight into the federal thinking and possible future funding on the issue. You've heard about the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. Both of those contained funding that can be used to address food waste projects that can support, is like a twin pillar with supporting food security and resilience and reducing greenhouse gases and other climate impacts of the food system. And we'll have links to some of the local plans that are being developed and out for funding currently. And I will also include here the USDA is a key part of interagency efforts to prioritize and address food loss and waste in America. And they also have funding sources and a new office for urban farming to support urban agriculture, as well as food infrastructure and planning projects. So it's worth keeping an eye on the federal policy changes, because it's driving some funding and great new interagency efforts to advance this type of work. I'll wrap up federal and turn it back over to you, Jack, because I'm excited to move into our hearing from everybody else.
Still muted there. Sorry about that. Awesome. I am going to stop my share here in 1 second. I am going to quickly try to set us up into some breakout rooms. Michelle, myself, and Anne Marie will be leading our breakout rooms, and we have facilitation questions that are ready to go. Yep.
Jack, maybe I saw there was a question in the chat from
yep.
Jessica. So maybe we can pause and just make sure other folks don't have questions, and that gives you a chance to maneuver the breakouts. Jessica asked whether or not we have the same waste data for Montgomery County. Jessica, do you want to expand on that question at all?
Yeah, we had the slide about the percentage of food that's wasted US wide, and I just wondered if we were able to narrow that down in Montgomery County as well.
As you know, if you know solid waste statistics, it's complicated, but we do have the ability every 4 years with a waste composition study that gives shares of our solid waste stream to different categories of waste. And then if we combine that with separate data on the total amount of waste that's in the waste stream, then we can estimate how much food waste is wasted in the county. Is that the question that you were asking specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always helpful to have the local information, and if it is something that is available, or maybe something we want to look into tackling of, making that information more widely available if it's.
Yeah, DEP hasn't actually combined the two data sources yet. I think because they're waiting on the total. The waste composition study was 2022, 2023. So that is an excellent data point that we are looking for from DEP. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jack, do we feel comfortable breaking folks out?
Yeah, I think we're all good. It will automatically assign. It will send our 3 co-hosts, 1 to each, and we should be good to go from there. Just as a heads up, it will stop the recording, so we'll be taking notes to just kind of supplement when we send that follow-up information, because the recording will cut out when we go into our 3 rooms. And we are going to spend, it is 12:30, so we will spend exactly 20 minutes in our breakout rooms before coming back together for a brief share out and some updates at the end. I will send a message. I believe I can do that from a breakout room. I will send a message when we have about 5 minutes left. And with that, I'm going to create our breakout rooms.
Are we gonna be able to see the questions in the breakout
Yes,
rooms?
I will.
Because
myself,
the
Michelle,
chat doesn't
and
carry
have,
over, right?
Yeah, so we can drop them individually into
Okay.
each breakout room.
Great,
And
thanks.
I am going to open them right now. It's always a good sign when people don't come right back from their breakout room. Tells me good conversations going on in those breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I apologize for not sending a 5-minute message. It took me a few minutes to figure out how to do that mainly. But I hope I didn't. I was just telling Allison, it's always a good sign when you hit end breakout room and everyone doesn't immediately come back, because it tells me there was some good conversation going on. And I know our group also had some really good conversation. In our last 7 minutes here, I want to just very quickly, I'm going to turn to Anne Marie and Michelle for a just very quick summary. Very 1 to 2 sentence what was talked about. We'll gather these notes and make sure to share it up in the follow-up messaging and emails, but I want to make sure to give time to the team over at MANA for an announcement about Food Waste Prevention Week as well. So either Michelle or Anne Marie, would you like to give a quick summary, or would you like me to start it off? I can start it off. So we had a really good conversation about a bunch of different topics. Something that came up a lot was education on multiple levels, whether it's around education for food assistance organizations, around best practices, education for households, education specifically around how to deal with these in multi-unit buildings, such as big apartment buildings or condo buildings as well. And then some other ideas we talked about were cold storage and funding opportunities, looking specifically at household education and household data, specifically SNAP household data, and whether that food waste is equal in SNAP households versus other households, to learn more about food waste. We also, Chris from So What Else also mentioned a system that is much more centralized that Houston uses as well. So that is something that I want to look into a little bit more about how does we create a food waste system that is a bit more centralized as well. And then my last thing will just be the Environment and Production Subcommittee of the State Food System Resiliency Council as well, tapping into that knowledge base and that resource as we continue to learn more. But overall, it was a great conversation, and I will share much more of my notes in our follow-up.
Thanks, Jack. I'll go next. Everything you said, so some of it came up, but so I won't repeat that. But I'll mention that we know there are places that mandate edible food recovery. And so there was an interest in learning what's happening from those places, especially given the virtual world that we're in, and bringing someone in from somewhere else. So I appreciate you also mentioning Houston along those same lines. And then also creating or trying to understand the food flow landscape to better coordinate how food is recovered and better understand how to reduce inefficiencies and promote better coordination was a theme. I also had a lot of feedback on where we should visit for what I like to call our field trips. So we're going to have to really narrow these down, but I'll share those out in the notes with you, Jack. Anne-Marie?
We didn't even get there, so good.
So again, a lot of similar topics, just two notes of difference. One, an interest in data for how Montgomery County compares to national stats and also successful jurisdictions that have programs. And then we spent a lot of time talking about the school system and opportunities there. So one, we want to make sure that we're engaging them in these meetings, but also thinking about, making sure children are being educated, because then they're bringing that education home to recycling and food waste efforts in the home. And then we did spend a little time too talking about, again, structures within schools that might increase food waste. So things that are happening with, how much time is allotted to lunch, the timing of recess versus lunch. We know that there are challenges there in the school system, but being mindful of, where there might be able to be opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie and Michelle. I am going to quickly turn it over to the team at MANA to give us just a little update about Food Waste Prevention Week that Naya had mentioned at the beginning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. So this is a quick reminder that Food Waste Prevention Week is happening this year, April 1st through 7th. However, we are also helping with an event that starts on the 31st. So there will be a bunch of different events happening throughout the DMV area. And MANA is going to be involved in a couple of those. So I'll just give the quick rundown, and I'll put the DMV food recovery website in the chat, but please know that it has not yet been updated with all these events since we're still getting all the information. So we'll be at Lost Generation Brewery in DC on Sunday, the 31st, doing a food waste trivia and a bread to tap event. And then we'll also be at the Food Council Happy Hour on the 3rd. And then on Sunday, the 7th, MANA is partnering with Compost Crew, and we'll be at the Bethesda Central Farmers Market doing a demo on how to make your own food scraps bucket. And then we'll also be providing information on where people can take their food scraps once they collect them. So those are the events that we're planning on doing. And I'll put, like I said, the website in the chat, but please know you're looking at last year's information.
Awesome.
I
Thank you
actually
so
put
much.
the
Oh,
link in. Sorry, didn't mean to
perfect.
interrupt. Just wanted to let you guys know it's in there.
Thanks,
Thank you
Trisha. I
so much.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Manna, for your work on Food Waste Prevention Week. And as I said at the beginning, we will have more information to share about our role with that Food Council Happy Hour taking place that week in the coming days. We are just finalizing those details. In our last minute here, I want to drop in the chat a survey we have put together with very similar questions to what was talked about in the breakout group, but just another chance to gather ideas and provide input about the future and focus for this group. And also, we want to encourage you to share that survey as widely as possible. It is totally okay to pass it to anyone, whether they're in this space or whether they are not. We just want to use this as an opportunity to gather as much input as possible for our planning. And then Michelle just dropped in a general partner survey that we have been using to ask questions about partners we worked with in 2023. So we dropped that in the chat, and obviously all of this information, including this recording, the survey, the notes, and the information from Manna will be included in our follow-up that I will send out before the end of the week. And that will also have that finalized details about our happy hour. And it is exactly 1 o'clock. So with that, I am going to stop the recording